I woke up before the sun, the way I always do on my birthday. I don't set an alarm. I never need one. My body knows when the day matters. The house was quiet, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the hallway clock that David keeps meaning to fix. The air smelled like last night's rain. The curtains were a pale blue in the early light, moving a little with the breeze from the cracked window. I lay there for a minute and told myself to enjoy the silence. 64. I whispered it like a secret. I didn't feel old. I felt in between. Old enough to have seen how fast joy can pass. Young enough to still wait for it at the door. I put the kettle on and rinsed my favorite mug. It has a chip on the rim, but I refuse to throw it away. Anna made it for me in the 4th grade, crooked letters pressed into wet clay. I'm a little off-center. The glaze is pink and badly done, but when the tea sits inside it, the color looks warm, like a small sunset no one else can see. I touched the letters with my thumb and smiled. I always do that. I tell myself it's for luck, but really it's because that texture puts me back in our old kitchen, when Anna stood on a chair with flour on her cheeks and told me one day she would buy me something beautiful and real. A grown-up gift, not a school project. I told her the mug was already beautiful and already real. She rolled her eyes the way children do when they don't know their promises are already enough. My phone was face down on the counter. No alerts. I felt the little sting I always pretend not to feel. It's not her fault, I reminded myself. She lives far away now, 2 states and 100 busy days between us. Work, long commutes, a husband who fills the space around her with his plans. I've learned to be patient. I tell people we talk every week, which is true, but it's not the same as talking every day with our hands messy from dough and our stories spilling out without trying. These days, I practice talking to her in my head so I don't forget the shape of it. I heard the bedroom door open and David came out in his robe, rubbing the sleep from his face with the heel of his hand. "Birthday girl," he said, his voice low and rough, the way it always is before coffee. He kissed the top of my head and reached for the kettle like it might run away from him. He is a careful man. He doesn't rush. He folds receipts and lines them up in the drawer. He sharpens pencils that don't need sharpening. If you watch closely, you'll see his shoulders go tight when something feels off, even before he has words for it. "Sit," he said. "I'll do breakfast." "You'll burn the toast," I said. "I always burn the first one, never the second. It's a system." I laughed. He did burn the first one. He scraped it over the sink and said, "See? Part of the process." He set a plate in front of me. Eggs a little too firm, toast not as buttered as I like. But I ate every bite and said it was perfect. He handed me a card with a bluebird on it. Inside he wrote more than usual, lines about the life we made and the way he still watches me cross the room. It made me cry a little, the good kind, the kind you wipe away before they land. "Any plans today?" he asked. "I thought I'd water the roses, change the sheets, and finally fix that button on your gray shirt." "Big party," I said. He smiled. "I have a small surprise later. Very small. Barely visible." "Like your patience," I said. He was about to answer when we both heard it. The crunch of footsteps on the wet walkway, the short ring of the bell, and a shape passing the frosted glass of the front door. We looked at each other. On my birthday, the sound of the doorbell is a drumbeat. "Go," he said. I wiped my hands on the dish towel and went to the door. The delivery man stood there holding a tall box, thin and careful, like he was afraid to breathe on it. There was a dark band of water across his shoulders where the rain hadn't fully left the morning. "For Eleanor Parker," he said. "That's me," I said. "Happy birthday, ma'am," he said. He handed me the electronic pad. I scribbled my name, and he smiled like he was part of the gift. "Fragile," he added, tapping the side of the box with 2 fingers. "I'll be gentle," I said. He left. I carried the box to the dining table and set it down. It was taller than my arm, wrapped in matte white paper with a thin gold ribbon. The ribbon was tied in a neat bow, the ends cut at an angle. Whoever did it had good hands. There was a small envelope tucked under the bow that said, "To Mom, love, Anna," in a clean, even print. My heart rose like a balloon. I pressed the envelope to my mouth without opening it, just to feel the paper against my lips. I know that sounds silly, but when someone you love is far away, even paper feels like skin. I called out, "David," but he was already behind me. He doesn't walk loudly. He appears. He looked at the box and then at me, then back at the box. Something in his face shifted, like a shadow crossing a wall. It wasn't big enough to name, but it was there. "From Anna," I said, showing him the envelope. She remembered. Of course she did, he said. His voice was warm, but his eyes flicked to the side, to the bottom corner of the box where the shipping label sat with its small printed truths. I didn't notice that then. I only noticed the bow and the envelope, and the way my name looked like it had been written by someone who stopped over a letter each time, the way Anna does when she concentrates. I slid a fingernail under the ribbon and loosened it. The knot came apart easily. I kept the ribbon in my hand because I like to save things that don't need saving. I set it beside the card and began to peel back the paper. It wasn't glossy gift wrap. It was thick and plain, like it belonged in a nice store where people whispered when they touched the displays. The seam of tape lifted in one clean strip. Under the paper was a simple brown box with a lid that fit like it had been measured against the air. There was a small notch to slide your thumb into. I could already imagine the vase, porcelain maybe, with little blue flowers that would match the kitchen curtains. Anna knows I love lilies and peonies and anything that opens slowly, like a shy face. Wait, David said. I paused. What? He was still looking at the bottom corner. Just hold on. David, I said, teasing. You can't stop a woman mid-unwrap. It's a law. He didn't smile. He moved closer. He touched the corner with one finger. The label, he said. What about it? Nothing. Maybe nothing. He leaned in, squinting, then shook his head. It's fine. I wanted to ask what he saw, but the box felt like a heartbeat in my hands, and curiosity is a quick river. I slid my thumb into the notch and lifted the lid a little. The faint smell of something dry and sweet drifted up, the way old books smell when you open them for the first time in years. Not the green smell of fresh stems. Something else. It pulled a memory from years ago, my grandmother's cedar chest, where she kept dried lemon peels in a muslin bag and told me to breathe it in when I missed summer. David put a hand on my wrist, not hard, not soft, just enough to make my skin aware of his fingers. Eleanor, he said quietly, and when he says my full name like that, I listen. Don't touch it. Not yet. I laughed a little to make the air lighter. What is it with you and the suspense? It's a vase. Maybe a candle. Maybe both if Anna got a discount. Just look inside first, he said. Before you lift anything out. His voice had a different weight now. Not fear, exactly, but warning. I searched his face for a reason. The lines around his mouth had deepened, the way they do when he concentrates on tiny screws and instructions printed in 3 languages. He wasn't playing. He was certain of something he couldn't explain yet. Is it the box? I asked. Is there damage? Did you notice a crack? He shook his head. No. Just look. I slid the lid the rest of the way, but kept it in my hands like a shield. Inside, nestled in pale paper shavings, was the vase. Glass, not porcelain. Tall and clear, with a slight ripple, as if it had been blown by someone who took their time. It was lovely in the way quiet things are lovely. You only notice when you ask yourself why the room feels softer. The paper shavings made a soft, dry sound as they shifted. I could see flowers inside the glass. Not fresh blooms. Petals held their shape but not their moisture. Their colors were muted, rose, cream, a brown deeper than coffee. The arrangement looked deliberate, almost sculpted. I told myself it was a style choice. Dried flowers last longer. They are memories that don't wilt. Still, something tugged at me. The stems were bound with a thin ribbon, not florist tape. There was a small dark spot near the bottom, as if something had brushed against the inside of the glass. I tilted the box to catch more light, and the shavings whispered again. A tiny rectangle flashed between the stems and the glass. Just a sliver, like the corner of a folded piece of paper tucked where it didn't want to be seen. I leaned closer. The smell of old sweetness was stronger now. I could hear David breathe behind me, slow and steady, measured the way he breathes when he's deciding whether to say what he's thinking. It's beautiful, I said, because it was. Anna picked well. He didn't answer. His silence felt like a hand on my shoulder that I couldn't see. Do you see the little note? I asked, squinting at the sliver. I think there's a message inside the stems. She must have slipped a card in there. Maybe, he said. The word sounded like a step taken carefully in the dark. I thought about calling Anna before I pulled anything out, just to thank her and hear her voice. I could picture her apartment, white walls, a couch she bought on sale, a tiny balcony with 2 potted plants she forgets to water. I imagined her face when I told her the vase matched my curtains by accident. I reached for my phone and then stopped. No, I wanted to see the card first. I wanted to read her words. I wanted to feel the weight of them before I shared mine. I set the lid on the table and slid both hands into the box, one on each side of the vase. The glass was cool against my fingertips. It was heavier than I expected, the way some beautiful things are. I lifted it a little to move the paper shavings aside, so I could see the base. I'm not sure why that mattered to me. Maybe because when you know something is precious, you want to understand how it stands. Careful, David said, and then a second later, the words again lower, more urgent. Please don't touch it. I froze, the vase suspended in that small space between box and table, a narrow piece of distance where nothing is decided yet. I looked up at him. David, you're scaring me. I don't mean to, he said. He swallowed. But something isn't right. What isn't right? He brushed the side of the box again, as if the cardboard itself could answer. The return address, he said softly. And the carrier code. It's not from where Anna lives. And the way your name is printed. Look at the font on the label, and then look at the handwriting on the envelope. 2 different hands. That's normal sometimes, but I don't think Anna wrote that card. It looks like a store clerk wrote it. And the scent, do you smell it? It's not new flowers. It's old. Dried arrangements smell like that, I said. My voice had a small shake in it I tried to smooth out. Maybe she chose them so they last. Maybe, he said again, and the word did that careful step in the dark. He reached for my wrist, same gentle pressure, same silent request. I set the vase back into the nest of shavings and looked closer without lifting anything else. The glass caught the light and gave it back in thin lines along the rim. The stems were bound with that ribbon, yes, but there was also something slipped between them. Something folded, a corner peeking like an eye in a shutter. I moved my face closer to the opening of the vase, peered down through the throat of it, and saw the sliver again. Not white. A little off-white, like paper that had been handled. The old sweetness of the arrangement gathered in the glass. There was another scent underneath it, faint and metallic, like the inside of a new coin. See it? I whispered. David nodded. Yes. I'll just check, I said. Just to read what she wrote. I won't take the flowers out. I made a pinching motion in the air, the way you do when you plan to grab something delicate without crushing it. He said nothing. His silence wasn't a wall. It was a rope tied around the moment, keeping it from running ahead. I slipped 2 fingers down the inside of the vase until they touched the edge of the folded thing. It was smooth and stiff. Not like a greeting card. Thinner, cooler. The corner bent against my nail and made a dry sound. I tried to pinch it, but it slid away, hiding itself deeper. I pulled my hand back out, wiped my fingers against my jeans without thinking, and then I did what David asked. I leaned in closer and really looked, not at the flowers or the pretty ripple in the glass, but at the space between the stems, at the small details that live where our eyes don't go unless we are told. The shape wasn't actually white. It had faint gray lines across it, lines like the ones you see on invoices. The ribbon binding the stems had a tiny knot inside the bouquet, as if it had been tied in a hurry and hidden. A thin thread of dried glue clung to one stem, the kind they use to attach tags in stores. The dark mark near the bottom wasn't a smudge. It was ink, bled a little into the ripple of the glass, as if wet paper had touched it and left its ghost. My heart did that unpleasant flip it does when a car brakes too fast. I didn't know why yet. I only knew that the picture in my head, the one where Anna stood at a shop and picked this with a smile, was arguing with another picture that had no smile in it at all. Eleanor, David said again, my full name a steady hand. Please, don't take anything out. Not yet. I'm not, I said. My voice sounded far away to me, like it came from the next room. I bent over the box, the rim of the vase almost touching my cheek, and narrowed my eyes at the hidden corner of paper. The gray lines sharpened into rows. The top edge had a small perforation where something is meant to be torn away. The corner had a faint printed letter in it, a serif, elegant and cold. I couldn't read the rest, but I knew what kinds of papers were letters like that. I felt the clock in the hallway tick, each sound suddenly louder than human speech. My fingers hovered above the flowers. I told myself I would not pull, would not lift, would not disturb. I would only look. I would honor David's voice even as curiosity tugged on mine. I leaned in until the world outside the vase went soft at the edges and the world inside it was all that existed. And then, with my breath held, I saw enough to understand that this gift was not what I thought it was. I didn't know the whole truth yet. I only knew that it was waiting for me, folded and hidden, pressed between pretty things, quiet, patient, and sharp. My hand trembled. I didn't touch it. I just looked. I didn't move right away. David's hand was still resting lightly on my wrist, not holding me back by force, but keeping me there with the kind of quiet pressure that tells you wait. There's something you're not seeing yet. My eyes went back to the vase. The dried flowers looked elegant in that glass cylinder, their faded pinks and creams blending into a warm, vintage palette. But now, after David's words, they felt wrong. They looked like they were hiding something. I leaned in a little more, angling my head so the morning light from the kitchen window could spill inside. That faint smell of old sweetness drifted up again, lavender and something almost like cedar. It reminded me of my grandmother's linen chest, but sharper, more artificial, as if it had been pressed into the flowers only recently. "What exactly are you worried about?" I asked quietly. David didn't answer right away. He stepped around to my side of the table and bent over, squinting into the vase with that careful mechanical precision he uses when fixing the toaster or rewiring a lamp. Then, without a word, he straightened and went into the kitchen. I heard the soft scrape of a drawer opening, the clink of utensils shifting. He came back with a long bamboo chopstick from the set we'd bought years ago and hardly used. "Here," he said, holding it out to me. "Don't stick your fingers in there. If there's something you need to see, use this to move the flowers aside." "You're acting like there's a snake in it," I said, trying to smile, though it didn't quite reach my voice. "Just humor me." I took the chopstick and gently nudged the bouquet. The stems shifted with a dry rustle, and the ribbon around them loosened just slightly. That's when I saw it properly for the first time. The sliver of paper buried among the stems. Not white like a greeting card. More of a dull cream, with a faint grayish texture. And it wasn't smooth. It had small folds, like something that had been creased to fit into that narrow space. My heartbeat quickened. "There's definitely something in there," I murmured. David leaned closer. "Tilt the vase a little." I did. The sunlight slid down the inner wall of the glass, catching on the edge of the paper and revealing black text in a neat, printed font, not handwriting. I caught a fragment of words. "Vase, $145. Necklace, $1,250. Engraving, to my love forever." I froze. The chopstick slipped slightly in my hand. My first thought wasn't even shock. It was disbelief, like maybe my eyes had read it wrong. I moved the flowers again, and more of the paper came into view. At the very top, bold and centered, was the company name in elegant serif letters. And just below that, the recipient's name. Not mine. Not Anna's. Laura Benton. I didn't recognize the name, but the moment I said it out loud, David's expression changed. His brow furrowed, and his lips pressed into a straight line. "You know her?" I asked, searching his face. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I've heard that name before. About 2 months ago, at Anna's barbecue. Remember? Ethan was on the phone, standing just out of earshot, or so he thought. I caught part of what he said. "Laura, I told you not to call me at this time." My stomach tightened. "I thought maybe it was a work thing," David continued. But the tone, it didn't sound like business. It sounded personal. I looked back at the invoice in the vase. "Delivered discreetly" was typed at the bottom under shipping instructions. My mouth went dry. "So you think?" I stopped myself. Saying the thought out loud would make it too real. "I think this vase wasn't meant for you," David said quietly. "Or for Anna." For a long moment, the kitchen was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. I reached in carefully, ignoring David's warning now, and pinched the corner of the paper between my fingers. It was folded into thirds, the edges crisp. When I slid it out, the bouquet shifted again, as though relieved of a burden. It was indeed an invoice, dated 3 days ago, paid in full by a credit card I didn't recognize. The vase was listed first, then the necklace, with the engraving clearly written, "To my love forever." Under ship to, the name Laura Benton was printed along with an address in a city not far from where Ethan worked. I stared at it, my chest tightening. This wasn't from Anna. "She doesn't know," I whispered. "Anna doesn't know about this." David nodded grimly. "That's my guess too." The thought of Anna, my daughter, living her life completely unaware of this betrayal, it hit me like a physical weight. My first instinct was to protect her, to hide this away, to pretend it had never arrived. But the image of her finding out months or years from now, from someone else, without warning, was even worse. I laid the invoice flat on the table. My hands shook slightly as I smoothed it out, reading it again, as though the words might rearrange into something harmless. They didn't. How did it get here? I asked, almost to myself. David shrugged. Wrong delivery address, maybe. Or, his voice trailed off. Maybe someone at the shipping center messed up. Either way, it landed in your hands instead of hers. And if it had gone to her, I said slowly, we never would have known. David didn't have to answer. We both knew the truth of it. I folded the invoice back up, pressing the creases sharp, and slipped it into the small drawer under the cutlery, the one we rarely open. Out of sight, but not forgotten. The vase still sat in the middle of the table, looking innocent again. If someone walked in right now, they'd see nothing but a tasteful birthday gift. But I knew better. Those flowers weren't a gesture of love from my daughter. They were evidence. Evidence that my son-in-law's loyalty lay somewhere else. The rest of the morning passed in fragments. David moved around the kitchen making coffee and half-heartedly checking the news on his tablet. I sat at the table with my tea cooling in front of me, staring at the vase without really seeing it. Every so often, my mind wandered back to the last few times I'd spoken with Anna. She'd sounded tired, distracted. Once, she'd trailed off mid-sentence, and then quickly changed the subject. I'd chalked it up to work stress. But now I wondered if she'd been feeling something she couldn't name yet. By noon, I'd made up my mind. I have to tell her, I said aloud, more to myself than to David. He looked up from the tablet. Not over the phone. Wait until you see her in person. She lives 2 states away, David. That could be weeks. I'm just saying, this isn't the kind of news you drop in a casual call. I knew he was right, but waiting felt impossible. The truth was sitting in my kitchen, dried petals quietly marking the day my world, and Anna's, shifted. I picked up my phone and stared at her contact name. My finger hovered over the call button, my mind a storm of what-ifs. What if she already knew and didn't want to talk about it? What if this destroyed her marriage completely? What if she turned her anger on me for showing her? But the bigger question, the one I couldn't push aside, was, what if she doesn't know, and this is my only chance to protect her? I set the phone down without calling. Not yet. I needed to think. The invoice in the drawer might have been just a piece of paper, but to me, it was a ticking clock. And each second that passed felt like it was pushing me closer to a conversation that would change everything. I poured fresh tea, sat down again, and looked at the vase one more time. The flowers didn't move. The ribbon didn't shift. It was as if they were holding their breath, waiting, just like I was. And in that stillness, I realized something. This wasn't just my birthday anymore. It was the day a secret meant for someone else arrived on my doorstep and put the truth directly in my hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. David was beside me, breathing evenly, already deep in the kind of rest I couldn't reach. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. The vase was still out there on the table, sitting perfectly still, looking harmless to anyone who didn't know. But I knew, and the knowing sat in my chest like a weight. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the invoice. The neat black print. The name, Laura Benton. The engraving, "To my love forever." My mind kept replaying the last few phone calls with Anna. There had been something in her voice lately. A hesitation. A kind of tiredness that wasn't about work. She'd always been good at keeping her feelings hidden when she didn't want to talk about them. Even from me. Especially from me. At 2 a.m., I gave up on trying to sleep. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake David, and padded into the kitchen. The moonlight through the window fell across the vase, making the glass glow faintly. It looked beautiful again in that pale light, almost enough to make me forget. Almost. I opened the drawer under the cutlery and pulled out the invoice. My fingers traced the folds, smoothing them out again, as if by making it flat I could make it make sense. I read every line for the 3rd time, searching for anything that might prove this was just a mix-up. There was nothing. The payment information wasn't Anna's. The shipping address wasn't hers. And the delivery note, delivered discreetly, was too deliberate to ignore. Whoever had ordered this didn't want it noticed, which meant it wasn't meant to be seen. The realization hit me again, sharper this time. If this had been delivered correctly, Anna never would have known. I made tea I didn't want, sat at the table, and stared at my phone. I thought about calling her right then. But what if she was asleep next to Ethan? What if he answered? My stomach churned at the thought. No, not like this. By the time David woke up, I had already decided. I needed to talk to Anna as soon as possible, but I needed to do it carefully. Over breakfast, I told him, "I'm going to call her today." He shook his head. "Not yet. You need to be sure she's alone. If he's around, you can't control the conversation. He was right. I hated that he was right. So I waited. By mid-afternoon, I had convinced myself to keep things casual. Just a regular call, just to check in, see how she was doing, maybe sense something in her voice. If I felt the right opening, I could tell her then. When she answered, her voice was bright but thin, like it had been polished for the call. Hey, Mom. Happy birthday. I was going to call you later. I've been running around all morning. You're busy? I asked. Yeah, Ethan had some work stuff, and I had to meet a friend for lunch. She paused. Did you get my gift? My chest tightened. Yes, I said carefully. I got a vase. She laughed softly. Good. I wasn't sure it would arrive on time. I ordered it last week. I froze. My mind scrambled. She thought she had sent it? Or was she just saying that because she knew Ethan had? What made you choose dried flowers? I asked. Oh, I thought they'd last longer. I didn't want you to have to worry about keeping them alive. Her answer was smooth, but something about the way she said it felt off. Like she was repeating a line someone had given her. I swallowed. There was a card with it, I said. Oh, good, she said. I told them to write something simple. My pulse quickened. Do you know what it said? Well, just love, Anna, I think. Why? I glanced toward the drawer where the invoice sat. My next words felt like a line I couldn't uncross. Because there was something else in the vase, Anna. A piece of paper. It wasn't a card. There was a pause on the line, just long enough for me to hear her breathing change. What do you mean? She asked, her voice lower now. It was an invoice, I said softly. And it wasn't addressed to me. Silence. Who is it for? She asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes. A woman named Laura Benton. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear faint background noise. Maybe the clink of a glass, maybe her moving into another room. When she spoke again, her voice was tight. And what did it say? I told her. I read the items aloud. The vase, the necklace, the engraving. The shipping note, delivered discreetly. She didn't speak right away. When she did, her words came out in a rush. I don't understand. Are you saying? I'm saying I don't think you sent me that gift, Anna, I said gently. And I don't think it was meant for you either. Her breath caught. You think Ethan? I don't want to believe it, I said quickly. But this isn't something we can ignore. There was a long, shaky exhale on her end. I knew something was wrong, she whispered. He's been distant. Working late. He's always on his phone in the other room. My heart broke hearing the crack in her voice. Anna, you need to be sure before you do anything. But I think this. I gestured uselessly at the vase, forgetting she couldn't see me. This might be the proof you've been missing. That night, Anna called me back. Her voice was calmer, but colder. I confronted him, she said. My stomach clenched. What happened? He denied it, of course. Said it must be some mix-up with the florist. But when I asked him to explain why the invoice had her name and not mine, he had nothing. She paused. I didn't tell him you found it. I just said it came to the wrong address, and I saw the receipt before I sent it back. That was smart, I said quietly. I'm staying here for now, she said. With him. But I'm not letting this go. I wanted to tell her to leave immediately, to pack her things and come to us. But I knew Anna. She needed time to process, to gather her own proof, to decide on her own terms. Before we hung up, she said, Thank you, Mom. If that vase had gone to her, I'd still be in the dark. When the call ended, I sat in the kitchen again, staring at the vase in the moonlight. It looked exactly the same as it had when it arrived, pretty, harmless, a gift from a daughter to her mother. But I knew the truth now. And the truth had a way of changing how you see everything. It had been 5 days since Anna's voice cracked on the phone. 5 days since she said she wasn't letting this go. 5 days since the vase stopped being a gift and became a warning. I hadn't moved it from the dining table. David suggested putting it away, but I couldn't. It was like my own private evidence file, sitting there in plain sight, daring me to forget what it had told us. Every time I passed it, the gold ribbon on the card seemed to glint a little in the light, as if mocking me. On the 6th night, Anna called again. Her voice was steady, but there was something in it, a kind of cold resolve I'd never heard before. Mom, she said, I have something to tell you. And you're not going to like it. I set down the dish towel I'd been holding. Tell me. I went through Ethan's phone, she said. I know I shouldn't have, but I had to. And I found her. Laura. Messages, pictures, even receipts. That vase wasn't the only thing. The words hit hard, even though I'd been expecting them. Anna. He's been seeing her for months, she continued. The gifts, the trips, all while telling me he was working late. The necklace from the invoice? There's a photo of her wearing it. He sent it to her the same day. He told me he had to stay at the office for a deadline. My grip on the towel tightened. I wanted to say 100 things, to tell her she deserved better, that we'd come get her tonight, that she didn't have to face this alone. But I stayed quiet and let her talk. I confronted him again, she said. This time I told him I'd seen the invoice. His face changed the second I said her name. He didn't even try to deny it after that. I could picture it, Ethan's smooth, easy charm cracking like cheap porcelain. What did he say? I asked. That it just happened. That he didn't mean for it to get this far. That she understood him better. All the usual garbage. There was a sharp exhale, like she was trying not to cry. I told him I was done. David had come into the kitchen by now, leaning against the doorway, watching my face. He didn't need to hear her side to know what was being said. Where are you now? I asked. At home, she said. Packing. The finality in her voice was both heartbreaking and strangely relieving. 3 hours later, the sound of tires crunching in our driveway made me look up from the couch. David was already at the door when Anna stepped inside, hair pulled back, eyes red but clear. She wasn't carrying much, just a suitcase and a tote bag. The moment I saw her, I didn't care about the details. I just pulled her into my arms. She held on tight, the kind of hug where neither person is sure who's keeping the other standing. I'm sorry, she murmured against my shoulder. For what? I asked, pulling back to look at her. For not seeing it sooner. For thinking he. Her voice broke, and she shook her head. Anna, stop, I said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. He's the one who lied. He's the one who cheated. You trusted him. That's not a mistake. That's what marriage is supposed to be built on. She gave me a small, tired smile. You sound like Dad. David, who had been quietly giving us space, stepped forward and put a hand on her shoulder. Your mom's right, and you don't have to figure everything out tonight. You're safe here. That night, after Anna had gone to bed in the guest room, David and I sat in the kitchen. The vase was still on the table, but now it looked different to me. It wasn't just the thing that had revealed the truth. It was the thing that had saved her from wasting more years on a man who didn't deserve her. She's stronger than she thinks, David said, nodding toward the closed door down the hall. She is, I agreed. But it's going to take time. David's eyes moved to the vase. What do you want to do with it? I looked at it for a long moment. I think it's time it left this house. The next morning, Anna came into the kitchen in one of my old sweaters, her hair loose, a mug of coffee in her hands. She noticed the vase still sitting there and froze for a second. Do you want me to throw it out? She asked. I shook my head. No. I think you should decide what to do with it. She walked over and touched the edge of the glass, her fingers brushing the ribbons still tied around the bouquet. For a moment, I thought she might cry again, but instead she picked it up, walked to the back door, and stepped outside. David and I followed her out to the garden, where the morning sun was just starting to burn off the dew. Without saying a word, Anna carried the vase to the compost bin, untied the ribbon, and let the dried flowers fall inside. The glass vase she kept in her hands. Maybe I'll keep it, she said after a moment. Not as a memory of him. As a reminder. To trust my gut next time. I smiled, proud of her even in the middle of her heartbreak. That night, as we sat in the living room with the TV on low, my phone buzzed with a text from Anna. She was in the guest room, just a few feet away, but she'd sent it anyway. If you hadn't gotten that vase, I wouldn't have known. Thank you, Mom. I stared at the words for a long time before replying. Sometimes the truth finds its way to where it needs to be. In the days that followed, Anna contacted a lawyer. Ethan called her, texted her, even showed up at our house once. But David made it very clear he wasn't welcome. By the end of the month, she'd filed for separation. It wasn't the birthday I'd expected. It wasn't a birthday I'd ever want to relive. But as I stood in the kitchen one morning, the sun streaming in, I realized something. Sometimes, the worst gifts bring the most important truths. The vase was now on a shelf in the garage, empty, clean, harmless. But I would always remember it as the day my daughter's life changed, and the day she stepped out of the dark.